What warranted closer inspection, however, were three contraptions. One was a door with a lintel, posts, and sill uprighted by means of two crosspieces parallel to the sill. It had a cleaver on it that could be cocked by compressing a spring. When so cocked, the cleaver would be released when the door was opened and the sill depressed by stepping on it. There was also a doorpost mechanism that would release the cleaver and prevent it from slashing a person going through the doorway. The next contraption was an intricate device consisting of a cast iron water pump on which was affixed a shooting mechanism that would fire a projectile when the handle of the pump was worked. The final minor wonder, at least to boyish eyes, was a ventriloquist dummy that had concealed within it a large, heavy, spring-mounted knife blade that stabbed outwardly with tremendous force when a trigger on the doll was activated. Then, when the blade of the clandestine weapon was pressed, it vanished into the corpus of the dummy. That's from James Shelby Downard's amazing, incredible tale, The Cardinals of Life and Death. That's a Farrow House book. Highly recommended that you read that, believe it or not. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Stench of Truth. I want to comment on two things very quickly, and then I'll get to the main point of this video. First of all, I want to direct your attention to fellow YouTuber Vocalbrush, V-O-C-A-L-B-R-U-S-H, and her latest video entitled Urgent Petition to Drop Cyberbullying Charges. And this is something in Rhode Island where two individuals, I believe two individuals are involved, posted on, I believe it was Craigslist, they posted in the rants and raves section derogatory comments about elected officials. And police are trying to charge them with electronic harassment, which of course is total nonsense because they didn't direct anything towards the individuals in question. They merely posted their opinions, their freedom of speech, if you will. In no way could this be taken as cyberbullying or in any way threats. I'm a big believer in freedom of speech, and I think this is a form of freedom of speech, and I think it needs to be protected. And any time the state comes down on individuals for expressing their much-deserved fucking contempt, especially against elected officials, and I have no doubt that the individuals who posted these comments were well within their rights and were entirely factual in describing the individuals in question in unflattering terms, because I'm sure we all have these assholes and fucked up morons that we want to make comments about. And to have any type of a chilling aspect put on this by the state is to be totally and completely rejected. So please see her video, Vocalbrush, here on YouTube. Vocalbrush, see her latest video, Urgent Petition to Drop Cyberbullying Charges. She has a link to a petition site where you can sign it, and she has a link to the Rhode Island ACLU talking about this particular issue. So please watch her video, and if you agree with the proposition, sign the petition and support these people and their right to express themselves. The second thing is the court case that is now being heard involving Westboro Baptist Church. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of people who are offended by Westboro Baptist Church and their proclivity for protesting soldiers' funerals, and for their God hates fags signs and what have you, which, you know, they use in their protests. It seems as though the court is going to rule in some fashion to restrict their right to do this. And once again, I have to say that being a big believer in freedom of speech, that it is absolutely vital that freedom of speech be supported towards the most abhorrent speech. And it is because these people bring out abhorrence that their speech needs to be protected. You don't need protection for saying something that does not fucking harm someone's ears to hear. You can talk all day about the fucking propaganda that is spilled from corporate-owned fucking media in this country. You don't need protection for that expression of quote-unquote freedom of speech. What you do need protection of is the abhorrent speech. The speech that people don't want to hear. The words that people do not want to hear and be forced to confront. Does that mean I necessarily support Westboro Baptist Church and their beliefs? Absolutely not. But I believe they have a right to do what they're doing and say what they're saying. I don't care what it is they say. They have a right to say it. And there is no basis on which the court can rule, in my view, to restrict that absolute freedom of speech. It is the rough speech. It is the terrible speech. It is the horrible speech that needs to be protected. Not all of the crap, swill, bullshit, and garbage that you're fed every day. Because no one's going to contest it. No one's going to be upset by it. No one's going to be confronted with it. It is that confrontational speech that has to be protected. And that's why this is an important issue. And their freedom of speech should be protected. Now, on to the main topic. You know, looking at the elections that are coming up, and seeing a lot of election ads, you know, and seeing how the right-wing stiffs, the so-called conservatives, are going on and on about how the government needs to get out of the way and how we need to have less regulation and less taxes and all this kind of good stuff that they talk about at election time in order to get elected. It makes me have to point something out to you that hopefully will illustrate a point very well. Since government is the problem and too much regulation is the problem, according to these right-wing assholes, why don't we just do away with all government regulation? Do away with all of it, because it interferes with free trade, which, if any of you have watched any of my videos, know that I believe free trade is a fucking piece of shit lie. There is no such thing as free trade. Okay? All trade is controlled. All trade is manipulated. There is no free market. There never has been a fucking free market. And there never fucking will be a free market. But let's just give it to the right-wing shill asshole fuck-ups for a second. And say that all the problems are it's too much regulation. So let's just do away with all government regulation. All of it. Then we could go back to the pristine days of the late 1800s. Whenever workers who are being worked to death for shoddy wages strike to get some semblance of justice in the workplace, are gunned down by National Guard troops or by hired Pinkerton agents, beat up and killed and murdered because they want slightly better working conditions. So we'll do away with the strikes. We can bring in the strike breakers, the bullies, and even the National Guard to kill, maim, and destroy any attempts to increase one's livelihood. And then, of course, the corporations would be free to rampage and pillage, much the way they did in the late 1800s and the early 20th century, which of course led to the Great Depression and the virtual destruction of the economy in the United States, and which again is happening now in the Great Depression #2, which is probably worse than the original one. I hope you see, by taking that tack to its logical conclusion, reveals to you the idiocy of the fucking idea. I want you to understand something, that the so-called right likes to paint the left as being Marxist because it's all about redistribution of wealth. I have news for you people. We already live in a society of redistribution of wealth. Though, it's not from the rich to the poor. It's from the poor to the motherfucking rich. And to corporations. Do you understand that your tax dollars that you have to pay and synthetic motherfucking individuals, corporations in other words, pay next to nothing in contribution thereof? All of your money that you pay every fucking year to the IRS goes to pay for government bureaucracies, which in turn make laws which allow corporations to make more money and pay less motherfucking taxes. Do you understand that? Does that sink into your fucking head? We already live in a system of redistribution of wealth. From the bottom to the fucking top. And any real progressive would be about trying to reverse that trend. Or at least stop it for fuck's sake. So that the poor are not sustaining the rich and enabling them to become richer at our expense. Realize that we already live in a Marxist system. It's a Marxist system that is designed to keep the rich rich, make the rich richer, make corporations bigger, increase corporate profits. And who pays for that? You and I. So we already live in a Marxist society, but it's not the Marxist the right wings would have you believe. It's a kind of Marxism that benefits the rich. So can we have some kind of balance? Can we have a balance here? How about having the rich pay their fair share? How about having corporations pay their fair share of taxes? How about we have regulations put in place which don't impede businesses from forming, but put realistic stops on what corporations can do, on what businesses can do, and protections in place for people, for workers, for the environment. All of these things that everybody should have at least a modicum of respect for and a desire to see maintained. And rather than thinking that we make too much money and we live too high on the hog here in the West, and we need to be brought down to some nebulous lower standard, why don't we have the idea that we've always been a nation of high living standards, and why don't we go back to the idea of promoting that, of having a sustainable wage for people, so you don't have to work 5 jobs to support your family of 1 kid, and be able to pay for ridiculous premiums of health insurance, where you can make a decent living at 1 job. And how about this? That we make it our goal, that we strive towards bringing that same high living standard to everybody else around the fucking world. Instead of lowering our standards with our so-called free trade partners, why not raise the standards of everybody else? You know what will happen then? There won't be any incentive to outsource jobs to Indonesia where people make a nickel a day. I'm exaggerating, perhaps, but you get the idea. There won't be any incentive because everywhere people will be making a living wage. Disincentivize that whole outsourcing. Get rid of free trade agreements. And look at things from a perspective of what can be done to a society that already benefits the rich. Well, obviously, you take away the incentives that benefit the rich and corporations. And in that way, you make it more equitable for everybody else without imposing anything on anybody else. or taking away anybody's rights. Simple. Thank you. Good day.